Okay, so I promised some of you to do a video today for the bread that I've been making. So I'm gonna do some cheddar jalapeno. If you hear sound effects at the back, that's just my kid. Um, I pulled out my book. I actually ended up writing the recipe down just for measurements in my baking book. Let me find it, because I've just started doing, like, I never got like a recipe, a family recipe or anything like that to pass down, you know, so I decided to start my own. So I gotta find it here, just give me a second. Okay, so it's a really easy wet dough non-ferment bread. So when I say ferment bread, ferment bread is generally like you're gonna see that in a sourdough, focaccia, ciabatta, stuff like that. Stuff that you have to let sit for a little while. Generally, it's about 6 to 8 hours overnight. It can go. I've seen it even like on a couple different recipes I found. I think I saw it for like 2 weeks or something like that. Like, it's insane sometimes, but we're not going to do anything like that today. It's going to be super easy. I have all my stuff out in front of me. So instead of the active yeast, I'm just using quick rise. This is what I've been using. I used the active a couple times. I haven't quite gotten the hang of that yet, and this is still really new to me. And so right now I'm just enjoying making bread and trying different things and stuff like that. And I'm wanting to get into a homemade kitchen as far as that goes, just because I feel more secure because of the fact I know what's in it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's a little different when you buy it from the store. That, and you just have this pride satisfaction of, I made my loaf of bread, you know? Like, there's a lot that you can do with it. So I'm gonna drink some of my coffee. So it is, if you want to just grab a pen and paper or use your phone or something to write these down, or you can find that post I put up the other day, and that has a picture of the measurements, but it's just 3 cups all-purpose flour. You can use the unbleached all-purpose, or you can use unbleached bread flour too. And I know there's recipes out there that you can use like self-rising flour. I haven't tried that yet. But that I got for like when there was no yeast available at the store to purchase at all. So it's 3 cups all-purpose flour, 2 1/4 teaspoon instant yeast. You can use active. That just messes with the rise times and the proofing time a little bit more. But you just gotta add about an hour and a half to it, and it's not a big deal. A teaspoon of salt. It calls for 1.5 cups warm water, and when I say warm water, you want to be able to kind of just touch it to your hand, put your finger in it, clean finger, stuff like that, without it being too hot, being too cold. You don't want to kill your yeast. I think it was anything over around 120. Keep in mind temperature of the flour and then outdoor temperature, so room temp, it adds into that, which it's a little bit extra. So I generally do just lukewarm water, and I end up doing generally about 2 cups, but it depends. So, you know, when you add stuff in, when you add a lot more dry ingredients and things like that, you have to use more. So with that all said, with me boring the crap out of you guys already, let me get going on this. So we need 3 cups of flour. Super easy, right? And then I have these like gigantic containers of flour because I've been going through it really quickly lately. I can't imagine why. And then I just tap and kind of level it out. I don't do anything crazy. I don't pack it down. I'm really not that particular about it. I may end up getting like that at some point, but I've just And like, I've never really been big into baking either. I was always one of those people, and I always have been, that I can't stand using recipes. I really can't. I really can't. I love having a full availability to be completely creative when I am cooking. So the fact that I even got into baking, I'm a bit surprised by. But there is still some wiggle room to where you can add your own twist into things and stuff like that, you know. And sometimes I will run it through like a sieve. Like, CJ got me this at the store, and you just crank it and it does fine. But I didn't really notice too much of a difference. I didn't notice if it made it lighter or more dense or anything like that. I didn't really notice anything with the loaves in particular after the end of it. And yeah, so just go ahead and give that flour a quick mix. I just use, it's a wet dough, it's a sticky dough. I don't have like a Dutch dough whisk or anything like that. I just use the handle of a cheap plastic spoon, spatula, whatever you want to call it. Like, that's all I do. And I just give it a quick mix. And it's super, super easy to do. Alright. And now we need, hang on, let me get my, and then CJ, I mean, I got this, but that's really not anything super, super fancy, but it does what I need it to. And so we're going to just do a teaspoon. Let me double check, but I'm pretty sure teaspoon. It's sad I've done this recipe so many times and I don't have it memorized yet. Yeah, a teaspoon of salt. So let me just, if you go a little bit over, it's not the end of the world. Just tap it on my bread box here. Yeah, there. Alright, so salt's done. Now we just need to add the yeast, which can be a little bit tricky. So if you're using active yeast, what I have seen recommended, I haven't tried this, and maybe I should have, because my yeast did not work out the way I had hoped when I used the active. So when you do the active, go ahead and get your water set up first, and then add the yeast to that and mix it in. It'll get like a almost like foamy head, like beer does out of a tap, you know. So go ahead and try it that way. I've also heard too that you can add about a teaspoon of sugar, just white granulated sugar, and mix that in to kind of give that yeast a little bit of a boost, so you have really nice and airy and very light bread. And the thing is too that the yeast and that rise time, it gives your bread the ability to have really nice gluten strands that gives it those airy pockets, so it's not like this like dense brick of bread. I made, I think, one of those the first time. As pretty as it looked on the outside, the inside was really dense, and I should have let it rise a little bit longer. So for the yeast, we're gonna do 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. Okay, so we're getting our yeast ready. Remember, 2 1/4. And if you don't have instant, be sure to try to add that to your water first. And just make sure that you have just around 2 1/4. I mean, everything's supposed to be, it's supposed to be exact, but it's not quite how I do things, and everything's turned out fine so far, so I'm not too worried. Nothing's blown up, no bread goop has happened or anything like that. To be quite honest, the hardest part is the waiting. No, I'm serious. It's you have to wait for it to rise, and then you have to wait for it to proof, and you have to wait for your oven preheat, and then you have to wait for it to bake, and you have to wait long enough to be able to cut into it without it turning into like this bread loaf of mush, because your gluten didn't have time to set after, during the cooling. So So that's probably the hardest part for me. But I mean, it's not really that bad. Altogether, it doesn't take too long. I've been playing with the rise times. So like the original recipe only says an hour, okay? And I did that the first time, but I got this really dense loaf, and I got this really dense, just I wasn't super in love with it. It tasted great. It was awesome, and I ended up turning it into breadcrumbs, which was fantastic. But I wasn't super in love with it. So I started playing with my rise times, and I think we're gonna do 2 hours today. I mean, it's not necessarily normal for the instant, you know, some people will only let it go for an hour or 45 minutes or 30 minutes, you know, and I think it does depend on too what you're going for. You know, this is a non-ferment wet dough, you know, so it's gonna be sticky, it's gonna be wet, you're gonna use a little bit extra flour. You're gonna end up needing parchment paper or cornmeal when it's time to bake. It's a really easy recipe, I promise. So we have our salt, our flour, and our yeast. So we have 3 cups flour, tablespoon of salt, or teaspoon of salt. Don't do a tablespoon. I did that. It did not end well. And 2 1/4 of the yeast. Now it's saying 1 1/2 of the warm water. Just go ahead and fill it to 2, and then just make notes as you're going and making this and adding the water of how much you actually used, because you don't want it to be overly saturated. Like if there's water at the bottom of your bowl after you mix everything together and get all the flour patches out of there and all those flour pockets, and you make sure it's real mixed in, and you have standing water like that, you used a little too much. So cut back and then just add more. You know, so it's just easier to add more than to try to take some away. It doesn't quite work like that. So it's just easier to go ahead and try to add more. So now I'm just gonna season everything. So I'm gonna do the jalapeno cheddar bread today, but I'm doing it a little bit differently. So I have my dehydrated jalapeno from last gardening season, actually. We cut it into slivers and I stuck it in my dehydrator, and it is awesome still. I really love it. I want to say these jars, if you're interested, I think are from Walmart. It still smells good. Okay. So I'm going to throw that in my, I'm using a little coffee blender because it works actually really great for spices and stuff when you have to mix stuff and you just don't want to pull out the mortar and pestle. Like my arms are really tired. I've been working in the garden, and I was working on the garden gate that CJ built, and I was getting that sanded down ready to paint, and my arms are just exhausted still. So like I don't want to add to that. I'm gonna add, let me get all my stuff. Okay, so I do a lot with the spices. You don't have to do it this way at all. If you want to just do a individual white bread loaf with really no seasoning, like you can totally do that. This is just what I want to do today. I'm gonna do like a goulash, kind of a chili type of a deal for dinner, and I figured this would go really well with it. And that's why I'm doing it this way. There's no requirement that you have to do it a certain way at all. So I'm just gonna add all my stuff into my coffee grinder, and I just eyeball how much I use. At this point, I've been eyeballing for years. So I just kind of have an idea of what I like and what I don't, and how much I need and how much I won't. And that's just why I do things the way I do. If you really, really need to and want to, I would say, if you're gonna measure stuff, if you're one of those people that you just have to measure things, start with anywhere from a teaspoon to a tablespoon as far as the seasonings go. And I think that would give you a really great base start to figure out where you want to go with it. if you need more, if you need less, and things like that. But I will, so I added my thyme. I just used thyme leaves. And these are great jars too, because I can resave these and pull these labels off and then make my own for my own spices when I grow them. And then I added Cajun so far. Actually picked this up at Menards the other day. I wanted to try it, and I actually don't mind it. Still a little unsure of it. I think I want to try it with some ribs in a few weeks or a couple weeks when it gets nice out again. It's just been so rainy all week. I don't want to go outside. And then we have, this is like a everything, kind of like a Lowry's almost. I want to say I got it from Walmart. I just randomly buy spices. Like, one of those people, I'm just one of those people, see something at the store in the spice aisle, and I'm like, oh, gotta have that. And I'll just sneak it in with a cart. Like, never enough cinnamon sticks or bay leaves in my house ever. And then I have my pepper, my pepper grinder. I'm just gonna go ahead and stick that, add that into my coffee grinder with my other stuff, just so everything's really nicely blended together. I don't really want to have any weird spaces of, did this get blended, didn't it, you know, so I'm just gonna go ahead and add it. Alright, so let's start with that. It's about, like, just kind of covers the bottom. Not a whole ton, a lot in there. It's just however much you think you'll need, and it's very possible I'll end up putting more in, but I'm going to go ahead and grind this down. Alright, so let me check this. Okay, so it's still got a little bit of stuff. And, ooh, okay. That jalapeno is a little strong. Alright. And then a trick I figured out, if you hold it upside down, it gets all that in the lid for you, and it's less time and that you have to spend trying to scrape it out of the bottom. And then you just slide the actual mechanical grinder out. And see, and that's what you're left with. So there's like not much to scrape out. But then all of that's in there. And I'm just going to shake that into my flour. And like sometimes it'll stick, you know, that's normal. And just hit it into your flour. I need like a little angled holder thing. So this is what we have so far. So we already have the salt and the yeast mixed in with the flour already. So we're just gonna go ahead and do the same thing with those spices. And I mean, the other day I did just like pepper and garlic and a ton of dried rosemary, and I made this really yummy rosemary loaf. And I let that rise for about an hour and a half. Today I'm gonna do a boule, or I think it's boule, just the round one, because that's generally the easiest to shape. But if you guys, you know, if you guys want me to keep doing these videos, if you guys think this is fun or enjoy doing this or whatever, or if you learn something, I don't know. I'm just kind of enjoying making bread. But yeah, I mean, I can do videos more like this more often too. And then as the gardening season's starting to get underway more, you know, I'm still having to wait. Our frost date for me to start really planting anything isn't until the end of this month, so I really can't. And then Hero decided to destroy all of my pepper plants, so I have to get those restarted. I am terrified to start my tomatoes because of that incident now. Yeah, he completely destroyed all my tomatoes, so like, or my peppers. So I've been having to restart that and seed saving. And you can hear him in the back, like, whining at me, because that's just what he does. Okay. Yeah, so I got all the seasoning mixed in. I'm gonna actually add a bit more here. And then also too, when I go to do my water, I'm gonna substitute some of my water for, I'm going to add in some jalapeno juice. Now, I understand that not everybody is a big fan of like canned anything, but you have to keep in mind it's a great way to preserve food. So like if you have kids who just absolutely love applesauce, like it's a perfect way to be able to do that. Like you can easily get a bag of apples at the store. You can buy a peeler, or you can get a peeler core. Like I can make a video on that if anybody's interested in how I do that. Not a problem at all, and it's really easy too because you can add a little bit of lemon juice in there, and then you can just water bath can them instead of having to get a pressure canner, which is way easier and cheaper. But yeah, I'm just gonna add a little bit of jalapeno juice into my water when I go to do that for my flour. And I can show you too what it looks like when you know your yeast is good, because it'll bubble, it'll be active. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, I'm just gonna add more seasoning to this, just because it's not quite as heavily seasoned as I like it to be. I like to be able to really see the pieces of what I've put in there. But that's just a personal preference thing. If you like a more refined flavor as far as how thick your flavoring is going to be in your bread, you know, if you don't want gigantic like pieces of black pepper or rosemary or anything like that, like that's fine. You can blend it down as much as you need to. It's a personal preference thing. And if you're the one making it because you know who's going to be eating it, that's completely understandable. I prefer to have bigger pieces of my seasoning. So like I'm just going to grab my tarragon and my chives real quick. These I did not make. I wish. I wish my garden was ready for that already, but it's nowhere even close. Hopefully soon. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. But and then like see what I was talking about, you know, you can get a label maker and you can put little labels on your stuff. And you can, you know, it's a lot of like creative recycling, I guess you could say. But today we're just gonna do the bread. You know, if you guys want to see canning videos or stuff like that, you know, just let me know, and I have absolutely no problem doing that at all. I enjoy it. It's a great activity for rainy days and chilly weather. Might not be everybody's thing, you know, and especially with when COVID started last year, you know, there was this high demand and low production of a lot of stuff, you know, and everybody kind of freaked out, which, I mean, understandable, I did too. But it left a lot of people who needed stuff without what they needed as a necessity. And so if we all could start doing just a little bit more in home, that would really, I think, just kind of help everybody out a little bit. It'd give us a new skill, you know, give us something to learn, something to do, an activity to be able to do as a family if your kids are old enough. Like I know some of you guys, you have kids that are getting close to high school at this point, you know, and they're old enough, they can learn how to do it. It's a good skill to have because you never know when shit's gonna hit the fan. I mean, really, you don't know. And having the skill and the ability to go, okay, you know what, If need be, I'll just make it myself. If need be, I can make my own flour. Like, you can grind your own oats if you want to. I mean, I haven't done it. I'm not sure that I want to. But, you know, it's having the skills and the ability to do this stuff is really helpful, especially in uncertainty. Okay, so I already have my spicings ground down, so I'm going to unplug my coffee grinder, and I'm just going to set it aside for right now, and I will just clean it later. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my book, just because I really don't want anything happening to this. I'm actually keeping all of that for Amelia, so I don't want anything happening to it. Alright. Stuck it up on top of the fridge next to my wine. So we're going to go ahead and open up the jalapenos. And I am going to take just a little quarter cup, and that's it, and just stick it in there and get the juice and add it. So I'm doing almost to the top. There's only like a 1/4 inch space at the top, and that's fine. That's all I can get in it, and I'm fine with that. If you really, really, really want a full 1/4 cup, or 3, because I did 3, so a little over half. You know, if you really, really want that, like, I guess you could add a little bit of water and like white vinegar, or if you really like the taste of a darker vinegar, you could do honey and balsamic vinegar. You could do that, you know. So I mean, it's really just personal preference. So that gave me right under a 1/2 cup. So I'm just gonna top the rest off with water. Yeah, so I just just top the rest off with water. So it is a little cold. We don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to get I'm gonna turn my teapot on, my tea kettle. Let me move it. And just add a teeny tiny bit of water just to warm it up. And I'm just gonna put that on high because it doesn't need to be on long, and I only just need it really quick, so I'm not super worried. But I think I'm gonna add more seasoning. See, this is the problem. I always do this every time. Every single time. Ooh, maybe next time instead of jalapeno juice, I can try hot sauce. CJ told me that there was this lady at the store once, and he was trying to find this hot sauce that we found online, and he couldn't find it in the store. And this little old lady came up to him and recommended this hot sauce because for some reason Amelia loves hot sauce. Like, even when I was pregnant. Ordering like buffalo wings and spicy pickles and like buffalo chicken dip. It was insane. Like, the heartburn was ridiculous, but I really didn't care. And this poor old lady, CJ goes, "Thank you so much. My 2-year-old's gonna love this." And this poor woman, I think, looked at CJ like she had seen a ghost. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know really anybody that has a 2-year-old that likes hot, spicy food other than mine. But I mean, I guess it makes sense. I'll sit there and eat just jalapeno slices like candy. That's why they call them cowboy candy if you make them right, you know. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and add the water in. It should be warm enough by now. And I just did a tiny bit. So it was at it was at 1.5, and now it's 1 3/4. So that's it. That's all I added. So we're gonna go ahead and add our spicy jalapeno water to our flour. All right. So let me show you this. So see how it's all got the bubbles and all that? That's how you know that your yeast is working and that everything's responding the way it's supposed to. So you're gonna just take the handle part of your and you're just gonna keep going and scraping the sides as you go. Like, you don't want to have any flour pockets. I actually found some in the last loaf I made yesterday. I thought I got them all, and I didn't. So you just got to be cautious, and you got to pay attention to what you're doing. And sometimes too, what I'll do is, like, when it's done rising, before I proof, I will give it another quick turn in the bowl here, and I just use a Tupperware. Oh, this smells good. Yeah, I just Tupperware bowl. That's it. That's it. It's perfect. Because it's big enough if I wanted to, and double my size for this batch. Like, if I wanted to do a proper loaf and then a bowl, you know, I could do 6 cups and double my recipe. And it wouldn't be super problematic. You know, I'd still have the ability to do that with the equipment that I have right now. Which eventually, you know, I want to get a scale to be able to do it in grams. Just because grams does a proper, complete calculation transfer. Where you just double it. So say a recipe called for 300. You just do 600. And it would be super easy to do. But, cups doesn't work quite the same way. So I'm gonna mix it a little bit more. Let me see if I can get it mixed in a little bit more so you guys can see what I mean. So see how there's like these little flour pockets, and they're not quite little yet, you know. Even with me mixing it, it's still a little bit too dry. So I have to go and add just a little bit more water. So let me get this measured out in my cup, in my measuring cup. And I think I'm only gonna do a half. At most. Just a half, you know. And it's just right underneath that. So I'm not super worried. And I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time. I add it like you add egg or olive oil to make pasta. I just did a tiny bit. Just to kind of get the dough a little bit more wet so I can get these flour packets off the bottom. Like, I wish I had another person help, because not that my arms are tired. I mean, I'm used to this at this point, but it's hard to explain, and I want you guys to be able to see what I'm seeing. So I'm gonna have to get some sort of something. Maybe I'll get a GoPro just to strap it to my head, so you guys can see. That'd be funny, wouldn't it? All right. Yeah, and like when you do this, you're gonna start seeing a little bit of those glutens form, but not to the extent that you really need to be able to bake anything, right? So like, we're gonna let this rise for 2 hours today. I know that sounds like a long time, but it's really not, I promise. And that'll give you time to go do your other stuff if you need to go run an errand really quick, and that way you can come back and it'll be ready and you can check it and see if you need to let it go a little longer, which with instant you really shouldn't. So like I'm still finding some flower packets in here, which that's normal, you know. So I kind of do this round sweeping motion around the whole thing. And then I'll go and take my spoon and I'll do a pulling from the outsides towards the center to make sure I get all those pockets. Excuse me. Can I help you? I'm doing something. Do you mind? Just give me like 5 minutes? Yeah? You want to give me 5 minutes? No. Don't you sass me. No, don't you sass me. Go lay down. Go play with Sissy. Sorry. Yeah, so let me. And like, there's a lot of bakers that would probably have a heart attack over the way I'm making this. But you know what? It's not the end of the world to me. Like, no baking police is gonna come knock on my door and take my flour away and remove my oven. You know, like, that's not gonna happen. What might happen is I might not get the loaf that I expect, and I might turn it into breadcrumbs. Like, it's not a huge deal. And like with doing the breadcrumbs, if you do make a boule, I highly recommend, if you're going to make breadcrumbs with it, plan it out before it turns into a rock. Just trust me on that one. Because that way you can cut the pieces and slices the way you need and then just stick them in a sheet or like on a paper plate or in some cheesecloth on the counter or whatever and let it dry out and then blend it up. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more flour pockets. So I'm just gonna take the end and just scrape down the sides of the bowl just to get as much of my bread dough into form with what's in the bowl now as possible, so that way I can get the biggest, best loaf I can when it's time to bake. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna to make sure that you get that done, and then you're gonna want to have some sort of baking device. So you can use a baking sheet, you can use, I yesterday used a pizza stone, you can use a Dutch oven, you can use a skillet, you can pretty much use whatever as long as it is completely oven safe, right? So like no wax paper, bad idea, don't do that. You can use parchment paper, or if you don't have parchment paper and you have either flour or cornmeal, you can use either of those so your bread does not stick. All right, so this is what I have now, and it's just dough. That's all it is. And so see how small it is now, you know? After 2 hours, you're gonna see a big difference, right? So even after an hour and a half with the instant, you're gonna see a change fairly quickly. I have been noticing the longer I let it go, the more airy my bread gets. And I'm really enjoying that because it's giving it a really soft feel to it, which I really love. Some people's ovens have a proofing option. So if yours does, you can just go ahead and cover it with a tea towel, which is just a standard, like this is what I've used, and it's fine. I use the same thing when I proof my bread. So I am going to show you how I go ahead and cover my bread. It's super simple, and it's super easy. Let me grab the lid. Hang on. Maybe? Where the hell? Okay. behind my pizza stone. I couldn't see the dang thing. Okay, so all I'm gonna do, let me see if I can move you down here. Yeah, okay, that works. All right, so I have my dough. I have it in my bowl. It's just a standard Tupperware, not a huge deal. Now, what I am gonna do is I'm gonna take my wash rag and like just clean the dough off the side, just because I don't want that turning into a big mess. You know, and you get it on a towel. It's a kitchen towel. It's kind of just part of the deal with towels for the kitchen. All you're gonna do is just lay your towel over the top. Try to make sure it's a little bit even. You want a little bit of an overhang, so do it long ways on the side of the bowl. And make sure you have like a nice warm space to put this. I've been doing it on the top of the fridge and it's been working great. Then I'll take my lid and just lightly push where the lip is for the bowl. And then I take it and I just put it on the top of the fridge. And I just kind of tuck the sides underneath and that's it. You know, and if you have to readjust the towel a little bit, you have to readjust the towel a little bit. It's really not the end of the world. So you're going to set a timer for 2 hours on your phone, in your kitchen, wherever. Like I use Alexa, so Alexa, set timer for 2 hours. Okay, so I have my timer set. We're gonna, when that's done, when it's done rising, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna check it and then see if it's ready to be proofed. If it is, awesome. If not, we just gotta let it sit maybe another 15-30 minutes longer and then we'll probably be ready. So okay, so my timer's up probably about 10 minutes ago now. So I was just getting stuff finished up for dinner tonight. So we have our dough now, and I will show you. I'm doing quick, just circular motions here, trying to work a little bit more air into it, but I will show you what this looks like. So see these pockets, see these strands? This is what we want it to look like. That's what we, with that rise, to see from the gluten. So that's going to give you a really nice airy loaf. So if you're going to do the jalapeno bread, so you're going to want to have your canned jalapenos or your sliced fresh jalapenos out, however you want to do it. And then you're going to want to get whatever shredded cheese you're using. So I'm going to just use, I think it's cheddar. Let me grab it. Okay, so this is just what I'm using. It's a 5-pound bag of the Fiesta Blend Great Value brand of just the shredded cheese, and that's fine. You know, I don't measure this, to be totally honest. I really don't. I eyeball it like I generally do with everything else. So I'm going to take about a handful and I'm just going to sprinkle it in there. Yeah, so we have our cheese in. So we're just going to mix that in just really quick. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, just get the sides of your bowl. Really just make sure that there's no dough left. Because otherwise you don't want it to go to waste. That, and I know everybody's like, I don't know if I have the time, I don't know have this patience. What's really nice is like you can get your dough set and ready and start it in the morning or the night before, and then the next day or after you get errands done or you get dinner started early or something in the crock pot or have to go to a doctor's appointment or something like that, like you can do it, and then by the time you're done and getting back, it'll be ready to shape and then be put in the oven, which is really nice. Okay, so this is in here. This is as much as I'm gonna do with that. So I'm gonna get my cheese put up. And I'm just gonna set that aside for right now. But next is kind of a little bit of a trickier part. So I'm doing mine on my pizza stove. I just prefer doing it this way. So I did it in the Dutch oven, and it was fine. It was just kind of a pain in the butt to get out, and with the parchment paper and all that, I just didn't, it wasn't my favorite, but I do love my Dutch oven, don't get me wrong. And I did it with the skillet, and I did like that, but it gave me a really large, like, wide loaf bowl, and I just, wasn't my favorite, but I did yesterday use my pizza stone, and I made an actual loaf, and I really loved it. I thought that it worked really well. I thought it was a really easy way to do it. I thought it gave me enough workspace to where I was able to pour my flour out and down on the space to shape my loaf, and I didn't really find myself having issues. Oh boy, okay, hang on. Before I put flour all over my hands and stuff, let me do something. So I'm gonna get a fork out just to grab some of these jalapenos out here. But we're not gonna do that quite yet. We have to wait until after it proofs for me to be able to do that, which is fine. As proofing is basically, from my understanding of it, I'm still doing some reading and some literature and things on baking, so I'm still, like I said, I'm still new to this. So powder your hands really well, you know, make sure they're good. Let me move you down here so you can see how I do this, because we're going to do some shaping, and you guys need to see this. That looks, yeah, just move you closer. There. But proofing is basically a final rise before you get ready to bake. So we're gonna just take it and we are gonna get all of the dough, as much as we possibly can, out and just scrape it from the back on the base of it, and it comes out really easily. And if you watch it, like if you want to watch how it comes out and just let it, you'll see all those huge gluten strands that formed during your rest. And I know it looks really insane, like it's going to be like this goopy mess, but I promise you it's not. As long as you paid attention to your measurements, as long as you did not add too much water and liquid into here, it will do what you need it to. So like, and always make sure to have your flour down. I do about a 1/4 cup extra, and I'm just gonna clean my spoon off here and see what I mean. It's like real sticky, but it's together, which means the glutens have formed, which is good. And you will just scoop in this side here. And like I said, it's a no need, so we're going to add a little bit more because that's normal to need extra flour, right? So right now we're just kind of pushing the sides in so it's not so wet. So it's a bit more workable, which is totally normal. And you're going to get some on your hands. It's going to be a little bit messy. Like, take your rings off, you know, but it's not a huge mess. It probably will be for most everybody if you're really starting out first working with dough. Like, I've made pasta before, so I kind of had an idea of how I needed to set my workspace. But not knowing that immediately is totally normal, and like, it's a learning curve. So you have to just give yourself grace and give yourself patience and give yourself the time to figure it out. Like, it's gonna be okay. Okay, so now that we have it pretty floured, you are gonna take, if you have a bench scrape, that's great, you know, but I don't, a lot of people don't even know what that is. So I'm gonna bring my hands over the what was flour bowl. You'll even hear them playing in the background. So how I do this, I take my right hand and I keep it at an angle like this, okay? And then you're gonna rotate and turn, and you're gonna use this hand flat, and you're gonna push it in the opposite direction. So you're gonna pull and push motion. And if you need to add a little bit more flour, that's totally okay to do. I like to really, I recently started really liking to flour the top of mine a lot. So you're gonna just keep rotating and rotating and rotating. One thing you do need to watch for that I've actually recently figured out, I didn't know this, I didn't find it in any of the videos I found, you can overwork wet dough. And what I mean by that is wet dough is fairly fragile. And you can get this like whole rippling type of a situation happening with your dough if you are pulling and working it too tight. Which, I mean, you can fix it, but it is kind of tricky to fix. With mine, when that happened, I actually had to almost start over and had to flip it, get it good on that side, and then flip it back to the side that I wanted it on. And like, oh yeah, okay. So you can kind of see right here that it started to do that. So what I'm gonna do is just lightly shape up the perimeter, and then go over with my hands just real lightly. And then I'm gonna fold underneath. All right, so that's shaped up. I like that. I think that looks good. So we are going to wash our hands, and then you are going to cover it with your towel for 15 minutes. While you do that, you are going to preheat your oven to 450 degrees. Now, if you are using a Dutch oven or a skillet, what you should do, you don't have to do this, but what you should do is you should, while your oven is preheating, stick that in there and let that also preheat. Now, if you're using a Dutch oven, do not put the parchment paper in there yet. What you can do is use or clean the same bowl that you did that held your dough. Clean that out, place the parchment paper, and then place your little boule loaf in there on that parchment paper. And cover it with the towel, and then let it rise. See, I do this all the time. I really shouldn't. I keep overworking it, but it's fine. Yeah, it'll be fine. All right, so now I got to proof it. I'm going to proof mine 15 minutes, 400 degrees. If you're using a Dutch oven and you're going to cover it, do 450. You're going to do 450 with it covered for 30 minutes, and then you are going to turn it down after 30 minutes to anywhere from 400 to 425, depending on your oven, uncovered for about another 15 minutes, so about 45 in total, to get that really nice brown color. So we are going to set a timer for 15 minutes, and then I'll be back. Okay, so back after my 15-minute timer just went off. So let me take my towel off. Okay, so this is what I have. This is my loaf right now. So what I'm gonna do is just do another really quick shape. Oh crap, haha. Forgot to preheat my oven. It's fine. I'll just add a couple minutes and keep a closer eye on it. I'm really not that concerned. So I'm just gonna push my flour that's still on my stone here, and I'm gonna just push it around and make sure that I'm getting that bottom space, so that way I have an easier time. Okay, so if you do not have parchment paper, you can use cornmeal, which is what I'm gonna do. So I'm just honestly gonna take the same one I did for the flour, and I'm gonna stick it in there, and I'm gonna get a decent amount, a little about like, okay, so for the full cup one, I mean there's, all right, so I'm gonna just pick it up, do my cornmeal, spread it out decent with my hand, and you can reshape a bit with the cornmeal underneath. That's totally fine. You can do that. Because some of it on the bottom is going to bake into it anyway, and it's not a huge deal. You're not going to create a big problem. You just push it back around, and it's going to be fine. And when you're done with that, if you think your loaf looks good, so let me clean my hands off really quick so you guys can see. Okay, so I will show you my loaf really quick. So this is where mine is now. So see how it has a nicer round shape to it. It's a bit more structured than it was after being proofed. It's fine, and that's totally normal too. You know, it's really, and like some recipes even sometimes will call for like more than one time being proofed. I know focaccia, there's a certain way to proof that, and you have to like fold and pinch and a couple other things, and it's really, it's not as hard as it seems. So if you're lucky enough to have a bread scorer, use that. If you want to score the top of your bread, go for it. If you don't want to, you're not required to. And that's the thing, it's like you don't have to do that. You know, there are certain rules with baking that you do have to follow as far as measurements, but deciding on if you want to use rosemary or garlic or jalapeno or cheese or whatever, like you get to decide that, and that's the great part. So I'm gonna just take a tiny paring knife like this, and I'm gonna score my bread. So let me move. Let me see. So I am just gonna do like that. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it like that and just do it like that. Now, if you do score your bread and you do a little bit extra and you get a little excited and you go, oh, I don't want it like that, you can take your fingers like this and just pinch that back together, or here, like I'll show you. So you see my score right here. This, okay, so we're gonna follow that, and we can just push it together a little bit, and then you go on the other side and you do the same thing. Yeah, and that's all you have to do. You know, it's really, there is a good amount of independence that you get to have while baking that I didn't really realize was available until I started baking. So I am going to now throw this in the oven, set my timer for 30 minutes, and yeah, we'll see what happens. So I messed up a little bit. So I ended up setting a timer for 30 minutes. However, I went back and I set another timer for 10. So when that 10 minutes timer is done, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it out of the oven, and I'm going to put those jalapeno slices that I showed you guys earlier, these guys, I'm gonna put some of these on the top of that loaf. So when I'm ready to do that, I will show you guys how I do that. So shouldn't be too much longer, but we'll see. Okay, so that 10-minute timer just went off for me to be able to put the jalapenos on, because I forgot to right before I put them in the oven, which I mean, it's not a huge deal. So I'm going to get my jalapenos and show you guys how I do that just really quick. Oh, okay. So I'm not gonna do a ton of them. So I'm gonna just take some out and put them here on my cutting board, just so that way the juice comes off. Just because I don't want that sitting on the top of my loaf. I don't want the top of it getting soggy. I want it to still have a really pretty crust. So I'm just gonna take jalapeno. Let me flip you. Hang on. Okay. And I'm just gonna place them on the outside of where I put my score. Oh, jeez. Yeah, and I have dinner going too. Huh. And if you don't want to use this many, you don't have to use this many. And if you don't want to use any, don't use any. Like, I'm not gonna come find you at your home and yell at you. Oh, Jesus. Maybe not this many. Oh God, this is so tricky to do through. Like, I'm having to watch what I'm doing through my phone screen. So yeah, I think I'm gonna just do. I think I'm just gonna do it like that. All right. And then after you get that placed, you know, I mean, I should have done it to begin with before I even put it in the oven, but I forgot, and it's not a huge deal. So I'm just gonna stick it back in for the rest of the 30 minutes, and then I'll be good. So my 30 minutes is up, so I'm gonna check real quick. So let me flip my camera so you guys can. All right, so that's where we're at right now, and you can see that it's pretty golden still, but I'm gonna probably cook it, I think, for another 15 minutes. But you can kind of tell too, see how the cornmeal right here is about the same color as my pizza stone. To me, that means it's not quite cooked long enough. If you wanted to, you could absolutely pull it out now and it would be totally fine. I'm just gonna let mine go a little bit longer, more so for the jalapenos than anything. But if you put yours on after you scored it, before you put it in the oven, and you let your oven preheat, unlike me today, you should be good to pull it out now. Just remember, if you do, you need to wait to cut into it at least 20 minutes. So when mine's ready, when my next 15 minutes is up, I am gonna go ahead, put this back on so you guys can see what it looks like when it's ready to come out, and the process for that. So, see. Okay, so my timer just went off, so I am going to pull my loaf out of the oven so you guys can see what it looks like, and so we can get to testing to see if it's done yet. Alright. Oh, this looks so good. Okay. You guys, look how good this looks. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to turn my oven off. And we're going to come over here. I'm going to flip my screen so you guys can see this. So this is what fresh out of the oven, like you can still see the steam on it. Oh, that looks so good. It smells so good. So there is a way to test if your loaf is done, and it's by tapping, yes, but we don't tap the top of it. No, we're going to wait a few minutes, a little while, just long enough so you can lift it up with your finger or a knife or something like that, and you can tap onto the bottom. And what you're looking to hear for and listen for is a hollow sound. So let me do that for you guys really quick. I'm just going to use this butter knife. I'm going to wipe it off really quick. But the only people eating this loaf here is going to be my family, and we're really not super germy, I guess you could say. I don't know. I washed my butter knife off. It's all good. Alright, so let us see if this loaf is done. So I'm just going to set you guys right here. Am I? Is it going to stay? Okay, it's going to stay for a second. I don't want to leave you there too long. So we're going to just do an easy lift. Just be very careful because it is really hot. You know, it came out of the oven. It's 450. It's still steaming, you know, for crying out loud. Let me get a different angle on this. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we're all done. So we're gonna just leave it here, let it cool, and we're gonna wait 20 minutes before we get into it. The reason we're gonna do that is because if I was to cut into this now, right, it does not have, and it has not had sufficient time to cool off, meaning all those gluten strands that we worked to build all that time, mixing in the ingredients when we first made the dough, to resting, to the proof time, to the reshaping, you know, all of that is going to be a waste if I was to cut into this now. So, you know, set a timer. I mean, I do 20 minutes at least. I mean, if you really need to cut into it sooner, I'd say 10 to 15 at a minimum, like a serious minimum. But even with that, like I would wait longer if you can. Some people even wait an hour. You know, you don't have to do it that long. I mean, depending on the recipe. With this one, you really don't need to. You know, and it is a little bit time consuming. And it took me a little bit longer today than it usually does. But I'm also recording for the first time. I've never done it like this before. So I was a little bit scatterbrained doing it, but it turned out fine. I'm sure it's going to taste great, and it's going to go great with dinner. You know, and you don't have to do the jalapenos. Like, you can do a garlic and rosemary, or you can do, if you wanted to do like a sweet pepper bread, you could do sweet pepper. I remember I did like a mushroom and leek bread once. You can use pine nuts if you want to. You can pretty much do whatever you want with this. And that's why I like it so much, because there is a structure to the recipe with this, but there is a lot of freedom here too. You know, you can do bacon, you can do sausage, you could do like almost like a breakfast bread. Like I did a cinnamon raisin, and that was really good for breakfast, you know, so you can do pretty much what you want. There are some limitations still, but like I want to try using this recipe for like a banana bread still too, just to see kind of what that would do. So if I try that, I mean, if you guys want me to record that for when I do that, I actually have a couple bananas here that are looking pretty ripe that I think would be good for some banana bread that Amelia didn't eat. So, you know, if you guys want to see something like that, if you guys want to see the canning videos of the applesauce, I made some jams last year. Oh boy. Yeah, if you guys want to see like different videos for pickling and canning and stuff like that, you know, all you gotta do is just let me know, because I can do that stuff, no problem. I haven't done anything with the pressure canner. CJ actually got me one, I think at Menards, not too long ago, and I haven't had a chance to use it. I want to do pickled peppers in the summer when I'm able to get peppers planted and harvested. And do you mind? It's not even dinner yet. You don't have to go outside. I just let you in. Go lay down. Stop being sassy. Stop being sassy. Stop being sassy. You can't have the bread. Stop staring at it like you're gonna eat it. God, he does this every time. I swear to God. Hero's head lives in his stomach, I swear. But yeah, I can do all that stuff. So if you guys want different videos and stuff like that for food preservation, just go ahead and let me know. Send me a message or comment on the video or my other posts about me making bread and stuff like that. So just let me know. So I'm going to give it a few minutes and then we'll be back, and I'm going to cut into it so you guys can see. And you guys I can show you different ways to store it too. So yeah, hopefully you guys are doing okay. It's not too tricky. So I'll probably take my cutting board over there, probably be easier and less messy. One thing I do with the cornmeal is I will take my butter knife and I will tap the bottom of it, not to double check that it's done. I know it's done. It's to get that cornmeal off. I don't really like how messy it is. But that's just a personal thing. You don't have to do it. It's just, you don't have to do it. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's just a personal preference thing. I do. So, here's my done loaf that I'm going to cut into. I wish I had a better place for my freaking recording stuff. That works. Sort of. Nope. Like that? Yeah, that works. Okay, there. You guys can just hear me instead, and it's fine. So I'm gonna take a decent cut into this. I'm gonna cut it in half along where I did my score, since I'm gonna be eating a good majority of this, and we're gonna be eating a majority of this for dinner tonight anyway. I'm really not concerned. Now with the bules, it's kind of tricky to get it to cut like a loaf that you get at the store. It's not quite the same. So I take my bread knife and I just take a big cut into the center and just go directly straight down and over. Oh, it smells so good. It's still steaming too. So let me move my phone so you guys can see. So this is the final, and you can see what I mean too. So like, I didn't get this one perfect, and that's fine. Nobody's gonna be complaining about that. You see this spot here? So that was a flower patch that I missed, and that's not a big deal. You know, I'm not super thrilled that it has that, but I'm also not gonna be about it, because it smells great, it's hot, and it's homemade, and it's fresh, and it's custom to what I wanted to do, you know? So we're doing stuffed poblano peppers, and I'm using the stew I made the other day. I'm cooking that down and repurposing it as the filling for the poblano peppers. And then we're gonna eat that with the bread tonight. And it's gonna be great. I mean, I wish I had a dough whisk, a Dutch dough whisk. I do. I think that might give me a bit more of an airiness to my dough, and kind of get those flour pockets while making the dough a little bit easier to catch and to handle. But I'm also not upset about it either. You know, I'm using what I have, and I'm starting out, and I think it's great. It smells fantastic. I'm really excited to eat this. I still have to let it cool. I probably cut it a little sooner than I should have, but I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, if you guys like this, if you guys thought this was easy enough, if you guys want me to do more videos like this and like the canning and stuff like I've said earlier, just let me know. I have no issue doing that. And then if you guys have recommendations or ideas for potentially doing like a YouTube channel, yeah, just let me know. I'm considering doing that. CJ's been kind of pushing me to do that lately, and I'm kind of getting on board a little slowly, but I'm getting there. And yeah, I hope you guys like this bread. I hope you guys are able to enjoy this recipe and just kind of really make this your own. You know, I can't wait to see what you guys do with this. I'm super excited.